Welcome to This Explainer. Have you ever wondered why some bosses literally inspire you to run through brick walls for them, while others just make you want to immediately update your resume? Well, today we're opening up the ultimate leadership toolkit. Whether you're aiming for that next big promotion, maybe you're managing a small team right now, or you're just trying to figure out the dynamics at your workplace, leadership isn't just some abstract concept. It's a highly practical set of tools. So let's get right into it. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll be defining true leadership. Second, we're looking at managers versus leaders. Third, understanding power and authority. Fourth, foundational leadership theories. Fifth, adaptive and modern styles. And finally, number 6, finding your own style. Okay, section 1, defining true leadership, beyond the buzzword. All right, let's dive into this with the absolute basics. Think about this quote directly from our source material. Leadership is the most researched and most controversial topic in management. I mean, isn't that kind of crazy? Something so common, something we literally interact with every single day at our jobs, is still so highly debated by experts all over the world. There's clearly a lot to unpack here. So how do we actually define it? Well, the contemporary definition states that leadership is the process of influencing employees to work willingly towards the achievement of organizational objectives. Now, what's really interesting here are those two specific words, influencing and willingly. You see, true leadership is absolutely not just about bossing people around or barking orders. It's about inspiring people so that they actually want to help the organization succeed. Moving right along to section 2, managers versus leaders, busting the myth. We really need to tackle a huge misconception head-on here, and that's the idea that having a manager title automatically makes you a leader. Think about it for a second. Have you ever had a boss who was fantastic at organizing schedules, a really good manager, but absolutely terrible at motivating the team? Or, on the flip side, maybe someone incredibly inspiring who couldn't organize a filing cabinet if their life depended on it? Well, that's because management and leadership are fundamentally different things. Management is much broader in scope. It actually comprises 4 distinct functions, and leading is just one of them. Leadership, on the other hand, is specifically that process we just talked about, influencing willing employees. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate goal. Look right there in the middle, that sweet spot. You've got managers who are not leaders on the left and leaders who are not managers on the right. But the aim of any successful organization is to seamlessly integrate both. You want to create good managers who are also good leaders, and vice versa. That's the whole shebang. Okay, section 3, understanding power and authority, the raw materials. If leadership is a toolkit, well, here is the heavy machinery. Authority is your literal right to demand action. Power, though, is your actual ability to influence behavior. Then we have responsibility, which is the obligation to achieve your goals, delegation, the act of assigning that responsibility to others, and accountability, which is evaluating how well things were done. Out of all these, authority and power are absolutely crucial. They are the most important elements for sustaining management. Without them, managers are simply unable to initiate or sustain much of anything. But where does that authority actually come from? Let's trace the flow. Step 1. Final authority always rests right at the very top, with the owners or shareholders of the organization. Then, step 2. That authority is transferred down the chain to management. And finally, step 3. Managers use it to initiate or sustain the management process. So that is exactly where a manager's literal right to demand action from their team actually comes from. It's a straight line from the top. All right, section 4, foundational leadership theories, the gallery tour. Think of these foundational theories as different lenses to view your bosses, or, even yourself. First up, a classic debate. Trait theory, championed by scholars like Ralph Stogdill, argues that effective leaders are essentially born. It focuses on inherent universal traits like confidence, decisiveness, and integrity. On the flip side, we have behavioral theory from researchers like Kurt Lewin. This shifts the focus completely to observable behaviors, like are you task-oriented or relationship-oriented? So what do you think? Do you lean towards leaders being born with the right traits, or is it all about how they behave out there in the field? Next, we hit contingency or situational theories, featuring key models like Fiedler's model or the Hersey-Blanchard theory. The core idea here is pretty simple. There isn't one perfect way to lead. Leadership effectiveness depends entirely on the specific situation you're in. Leading a creative brainstorm requires a completely different style than leading a team through a high-stakes crisis, right? The catch, though, as our source points out, it can be incredibly complex for a leader to constantly shift gears and apply this consistently depending on the exact circumstances.
Moving into Section 5, Adoptive and Modern Styles, Evolving the Toolkit.
Enter Transformational Leadership, introduced by James McGregor Burns. Transformational leaders inspire their followers to achieve well beyond their own self-interests for a collective identity. This is high-energy, visionary stuff. It's all about rallying a team around a really powerful shared purpose.
So, what makes these transformational leaders tick? Well, the key characteristics are charisma, inspiration, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. Basically, they make you feel seen and push you to think bigger. But I do have to throw in a warning here. There's a major limitation. Relying too heavily on a single highly charismatic personality is really risky. The emphasis on charisma raises concerns about a dangerous dependency on the leader's personality alone. Think of a charismatic startup founder. If they leave, does the whole company just fall apart? Let's pivot and contrast two completely different modern styles, transactional versus servant leadership. Picture a transactional boss. They're focused purely on the exchange, rewards, punishments, hitting clear performance standards and quotas. It works, for sure, but it might not foster long-term commitment. Now picture a servant leader, which is a concept pioneered by Robert K. Greenleaf. This leader turns the hierarchy totally upside down. They prioritize their followers' needs, focusing deeply on empathy, humility, and the team's personal growth and well-being. We have two more tools to add to our modern toolkit. First up is path goal theory. Think of this leader as a sort of snowplow. Their job is to clarify the path to goal achievement and actively remove obstacles for their team. Then we have authentic leadership. This is all about leaders being genuine, transparent, and completely aligned with their core beliefs. But remember, an authentic leader's effectiveness heavily hinges on the organizational culture and their own genuine self-awareness. We'll end our gallery tour with laissez-faire leadership, associated with historical thinkers like Adam Smith. This is a completely hands-off approach, allowing subordinates to make decisions with minimal guidance. Basically, it's the boss who's always on the golf course approach. While extreme decentralization sounds incredibly freeing, the limitation is pretty obvious. If it isn't perfectly balanced, this extreme hands-off style can lead to a total lack of direction and accountability. Finally, Section 6, Finding Your Own Style, Building Your Toolkit. Let's pull all of this together. Here are your core takeaways. First, managers absolutely must strive to also be good leaders. The titles aren't interchangeable, as we saw earlier. Second, you have to use your authority and power appropriately to actually influence those willing employees. Third, and most importantly, there is absolutely no one-size-fits-all approach here. The most effective leaders don't just pick one theory. They draw from multiple theories. Real leadership is about opening this toolkit and pulling out the exact right tool depending on what the moment, the situation, and your team actually demands. I want to leave you with this powerful, provocative question as you reflect on your own day-to-day role. Are you just managing, or are you ready to lead? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and I really hope you use these tools to build something truly exceptional.